Hey everyone, it's Types, and rotation is right around the corner in the Pokemon TCG standard format, just a few weeks away. And if you're not familiar with what that means, it's really an important thing, right? Because we are not going to be able to play the oldest year's worth of Pokemon cards after rotation in the standard format ever again, unless they're reprinted, which could happen for trainers like, say, Professor's Research. I would not be shocked if that gets reprinted at some point. In fact, I would expect it to. But if you want to play Gholdengo EX, then you need to play it now, and you presumably won't be able to play it in standard ever again. You could play it with your friends if you want to, or whatever, certainly. But certainly, in regular standard, you're not going to be able to play it. So if you want to play some of these old decks that are going to be rotating, make sure you play them before rotation. Today, I'm going to be going over 5 decks that are good, or maybe they were good, is the better way to describe it. These are all 5 decks that were at some point pretty good. Some of them have lost pretty substantial pieces already from previous rotations, as you'll see. But yeah, the cards rotating as well. If you're not familiar, there are the G Block cards. So we see stuff like Charizard EX, we see Gholdengo EX, and we see Gardevoir EX being 3 powerful decks that are rotating. So, if you want to play those I guess would be included here as well. But the decks that I said that I'm talking about in this video are decks that are, you know, they are they were good, but aren't quite as good right now. Though are still all right as well. I'll be going over each one in a case by case basis. But also make sure you subscribe to my channel so you don't miss future post rotation content as well. Because Perfect Order, which is, if you didn't know, releasing like at the same time as rotation, is right around the corner, as I said, and is something that's super cool. And I'm super excited to actually dive into all that post rotation stuff. I've dived into it some on my channel already, but I'm super excited to actually start playing it once rotation happens. But first deck we have here, these are older lists, so these lists aren't standard. If you want lists, all the lists are, of course, on Limitless, but you can find lists on Limitless. Honestly, for this deck here, Chien-Pao by Excalibur, I don't know how many actually going to find that are recent, that are like good. But honestly, Chien-Pao Excalibur is an okay deck. I think it's, a deck I imagine probably many of you haven't seen in a while. But Chien-Pao EX tier has the ability to get water energies into its hand, and then it does damage based on water energies on your board. And then Excalibur gets water energies onto your board from your hand, right? So the idea is get a bunch of energies into play and do big damage. It kind of plays like Gholdengo is kind of why I describe it like. You can see the deck running Superior Energy Retrieval being a very big part of it. Obviously, still the case now. Well, there are other pieces like Pokestop, Frost, which are Battle VIP Pass, and even something like Arceus V-Star, which are not in format, certainly. They rotated a while ago. And I guess Radiant Greninja is a pretty big deal for this list here. You still have some, you have the core, Chien-Pao EX with Excalibur. You even have Bravery Charm if you need it. You don't have Irida, which is a powerful supporter with it. As I said, alongside Radiant Greninja, some very powerful cards, pretty important to the deck. But you can still set up. I will say getting Badooed hurts, but that's true for a lot of stage 2 decks. So the deck it's okay, I guess. As I said, I haven't really played it. It's a deck I need to play again at some point before rotation, probably. But if you have never played this deck, I'd recommend trying it out. With these style of decks, we get a stage 2, get a bunch of energy on your board. They are semi-common. I mean, we have Emboar in standard, which is kind of the same thing. But ultimately, if you haven't tried these decks ever, I'd recommend trying it at least once. And Chien-Pao Excalibur is a fine enough place to start. As I said, it's not amazing, but it definitely was quite good at a time. Then we have the next deck here. This is a deck that actually is good now, I guess. This list is, again, not standard. But this is Pidgeot Control, with, of course, the main Pokemon Pidgeot EX rotating. Control will be playable post-rotation, as it always is, but also, it's always kind of weird and changing. If you're looking for a list, this is one where I would recommend looking at, play Limitless or regular Limitless, looking at, um, you know, a current list. Obviously, it's a little hard if you just search a Pidgeot EX and cards with, or decks with Pidgeot EX. Obviously, you're going to see a lot of Charizard, but Pidgeot EX is a really powerful card, letting you search for your deck for any card every turn, which of course is rotating. We did see the new Crobat revealed, as well as we got Festivalid, or I guess Boom Boom Groove. There we go. That's the name of the ability, which you got on Thwackey there, to search for cards. But those are they have their issues, right? But Pidgeot EX, getting you a card every turn, gives you a lot of consistency. Of course, you pair this with a wide variety of different things, like so many different things, right? And the things that are in it change, but Control decks generally are going to be going for wins by, removing your opponent's resources, generally by removing all their resources, and then they'll like deck out. You're not actively going after the win like a mill deck. Maybe sometimes you'll have some form of mill, but a lot of the times it's something as weak as just like waiting for them to deck out, maybe using Zero-6 Machinations so that they're not like Ionoing 20 cards back into their deck or something like that. But ultimately, you're a pretty slow deck with lots of turns, not necessarily long turns, and not necessarily long games. Like you could have a super long game in terms of number of turns where the like length of the game isn't actually that long. But anyways, if you haven't ever played Control, then try out Pidgeot Control. It is actually interesting. It's really difficult at first because it's completely different than any other deck in the game, really. But it is definitely interesting after playing it some, and it really helps you understand more things about the Pokemon TCG. I made videos about like different things you could do to improve and different things you could try out that if you haven't tried, then you might be missing some skills. Control is definitely one of those decks, so I'd highly recommend it. It is interesting, or maybe it's not your thing. If you just won't like it, but it is very useful to be able to play against it. If you've never played it, it's going to be a little hard to play against. That's true for any deck, but it's more true the more different the deck is. Unlike say the default straightforward deck in my mind is always like Ceruledge. Yeah, you got like Briar, and you got some single pars options, and it's not like completely brain dead or anything to play that deck. Unlike I don't know. I mean, honestly, every deck, like there are lots of decks that you're like, oh wow, that deck like doesn't really do anything. But then you try it out and you're like, wow, there's actually a lot more things that I was thinking about. Not that there are like a ton of super meaningful actions, but there are definitely some that you'll make during the game that are sometimes difficult. But ultimately, you have Pidgeot EX with so many different options. You can literally choose any card for your deck every turn once Pidgeot EX is in play. You to get that in play, so you need to set that up, which isn't that part's pretty easy. Then going on from there, you have so many, or I don't know, you have like one big decision every turn of what you want to get, and obviously a lot of different options in the deck. So it's like really, really pushing you and really making you think. It's really interesting, in my opinion. It's not everyone's thing, but it is very useful to understand as well, and be able to have the skill to pivot to different strategies, which you'll get through this deck. When we have the next deck here, this is like the opposite. This is like a silly, stupid deck here. This is United Wings. United Wings is a really fun deck. As I said, silly, kind of stupid. I will say, I guess this deck probably is okay and expanded. I'm not super familiar with the expanded metagame. I mean, I'm like moderately familiar, probably a lot more familiar than most of the people watching this, to be honest, because like people don't really play expanded. But in standard and also in expanded, you're just probably going to get obliterated by spread. So I guess I will warn you of that. But ultimately, the deck is able to go ahead and attack with Murkrow for 1 darkness, for a lot of damage using United Wings, which is the name of the deck, but obviously named after the attack there, which is United Wings, which is damage based on Pokemon in the discard with the attack United Wings, and there are 4 of them. There were 3 at the time of this deck list being made. So you can be doing a lot of damage for 1 energy on a basic single prizer. There's some like other ones as well you can attack with. They are all actually like a little interesting. There's some like weakness stuff, I guess. But ultimately, United Wings is really fun, just like kind of dumping stuff into the discard, and then also going and doing big damage on a single prizer. It's definitely kind of bad at times when you just get like obliterated by Dragapult. That can like happen. But if that doesn't happen, it can be like super fun and silly. That like really fun element of Ceruledge where you're like or Alexander, you're doing just like huge damage, I think is amplified even more with United Wings because you can just pop off out of nowhere theoretically using like just discarding a bunch of cards, researching away like 70 United Wings Pokemon is 140 more damage. You can like research and like Ultra Ball and theoretically just do an absurd amount of damage. That's like not super likely. In Expand, I will say it is actually more explosive. That's true that any deck, but you can do some like really, really silly stuff with this deck. Again, you're not necessarily going to be doing it that often, but when you do, it's an amazing feeling. It's really fun if you're looking for a deck that's like a cool single price deck. I'd highly recommend. if you like Alakazam, you very well may like this deck. And honestly, we've seen decks like this a few times, and they've always been super, super fun. And United Wings is no exception, I guess, as I said, except for when you don't set up, which is actually all true with all the, or when I say don't set up, but when you when the deck falls apart. I made a video talking about Glass Cannon decks, and I basically talked about, I think, Mad Party, which actually has the issue more so than United Wings, because of lower HP and some other things. But ultimately, the deck is super fun. It said the main attacker is going to be Murkrow here. There is also the Dartrix, which are both 1 energy attackers there. The other ones are 2 energy, which we don't have double turbo. So we go ahead and mention that if you have deck construction questions there. But yeah, Murkrow is a fun Pokemon. Then we got the next deck here. This is the other side of the coin in terms of control. You're probably deck your opponent out over time. Mill is not that, and this is Great Tusk Mill. I will say Great Tusk Mill is Great Tusk isn't rotating, so technically you could play this post rotation. It's technically. So Great Tusk here, if you're not familiar, has the attack land collapse for 2 colors. So discard the top card of your opponent's stack. That's not that good. Mill, if you're not familiar, is just discarding the cards from the top of your opponent's stack. If you can't draw a card at the start of your turn, then of course you lose. So you want to get rid of all your opponent's cards and then just win eventually. But then if you play an Ancient Supporter, you can discard 3 more. So you discard 4. Discarding 4 cards per turn is okay, and can win you the game. You need to be playing, of course, an Ancient Supporter. So let me pull this up here. I don't remember what the thing for Ancient is. Well, it looks like that pulls it up. But anyways, there's 2 Ancient Supporters. There is Professor Sada's Vitality and Explorer's Guidance. Professor Sada's Vitality is rotating, right? Professor Sada's Vitality is rotating, which I do think is very bad for Raging Bolt. I know Raging Bolt is seeing play in Japan and doing decently. The best deck is Dragon Bolt, but behind that, there are a handful of decent decks. But I do think it is a big loss for Raging Bolt, but regardless, it's a much bigger loss for Great Tusk because you need to play the Ancient Supporter on your turn. If you don't, you just mill 1, and that's really bad. Also, we are losing Counter Catcher, which is a big deal because usually Gusting is pretty important for control decks. With the mill, theoretically, you don't need to go for control options. You could just mill them a bunch and then win. But even if you attack for 7 turns, which is your first turn, and then they maybe miss an attack and knock you out 6 times, right? Or something like that, right? You attack 7, maybe even 8 turns there. That's not even milling their whole deck. That's milling half their deck. So yes, they're gonna draw some cards, and they kind of need to set up, but you're not even winning, and that's in the dream scenario, right? So you need to disrupt them some. There are different disruptive tools, sometimes literal tools like Handheld Fan. But then there's Counter Catcher. Guessing your Pokemon up is super important, and as I said, you can't really use Boss's Orders. You need to be playing an Ancient Supporter every turn, right? So, anyways, you have Explorer's Guidance as well, which is the Ancient Supporter that isn't rotating, which is okay. It's an okay supporter. Like a tier 2 supporter. Most tier 2 supporters essentially don't really see any play at all. I guess it depends exactly where you're drawing the bar. If you include say proc scouting or something, then yeah, sure, that sees play, but I wouldn't say that's I'd probably put it above there. But anyways, Explorer's Guidance is not as good as proc scouting, except it is an Ancient Supporter. It's it's an okay supporter, but it's not that good. And then you need 2 energies as well. So the deck ideally you'd have a way to get 2 energies on easier. You don't really have that. I guess you get Counter Gain, actually. Counter Gain, another thing about it, is super good for the deck. But yeah, you're losing Sadas. That's really bad. So I don't really think the deck's going to function at all post rotation. So I'd highly recommend trying it out now. And it is really fun in terms of mill. Ultimately, mill decks are, I don't know, I personally don't enjoy them that much because, so the way they work, as I said, usually if you mill, you're not going to mill all your opponent's cards just super quickly and win the game. That's not really going to happen ever. So instead you need to disrupt them some, but then you also disrupt them by getting rid of resources from their deck, which are just random. And so there's a lot of randomness there. It feels bad to play with. It feels bad to play against. And it often ends up with these somewhat unfun experiences, in my opinion. But some people do like mill. And there is also Wugtrio Mill, I will say. I was considering including Wugtrio Mill. Wugtrio is super bad. Well, it's not super bad. It's just kind of okay. It's certainly not that good. So it's a bit of a meme, but it's definitely gotten better over time to the point where I think it's actually kind of okay. But anyways, this is three colorless, and then you flip three coins for each heads and mill three. Also randomly, funnily enough, just revealed at the time of recording this today, is the new. I don't even remember what Pokemon it is. It might be a Ferrothorn, but it's like an anti-mill card. It's really bizarre, but theoretically, I guess that's bad for mill. But I don't know. Just wanted to mention that. I don't know. It's probably one of these cards I'm just gonna like mention a lot, even though it never matters. But anyways, so we got Wugtrio. So if you were playing mill post rotation and then you got like hit by the anti-mill card, that'd be like presumably bad. But anyways, Wugtrio mills on average half a card more than Great Tusk, assuming you're playing a supportive return to Great Tusk, and obviously like attacking every turn and stuff. I guess Great Tusk is a basic, so we can attack earlier. But anyways, Wugtrio is, they have differences. Wugtrio is an evolution. That's going to be the main difference there, I guess. So anyways, figured I would mention Wugtrio. Wugtrio hasn't really seen play either. Like, it's seen some like meme play from time to time. It's like, just like the definition of a meme deck. I mean, it's a Wugtrio, right? What are you expecting from this Pokemon? But yeah, I figured I'd mention that, but Great Tusk is like legitimately, or it was legitimately a pretty good deck. Definitely the best mill deck I think we've seen the past like 10 years. Or, well, okay, the best pure mill deck in my opinion. Like there have been some other ones that are good and they're called mill. Like I guess they are mill with like Wilbur Bryson Man and um like Hugo GX and stuff. I don't know. They're like pretty heavy control and like recovery loop stuff. Not that that's not sometimes interesting, but it's not this like pure mill. But anyways, this deck is kind of fun. It doesn't look like, as far as I'm aware, that there's any mill decks post rotation, unless I'm missing something. I mean, there's not really any mill decks pre rotation. There's a couple, and they're like rotating. So yeah, anyways, Great Tusk is pretty fun. It's kind of bad, but it is fun, and it's definitely a fun experience to try sometimes. Then we have the next and final deck here. This one's Roaring Moonyax. This is actually, like, this deck was good. Specifically with Dark Patch, I will mention that's like a big deal. That was in the format when this came out, and that was good, and then, now it's not. But you have two attacks. The second one just does essentially 220 for 3, which is pretty good. Doing a stadium, then you do lose the stadium there. But then you also have Frenzy Gouging doing essentially even more damage and instant knockout. Keep in mind this isn't effective in attack. Not that matters too much, but it could matter. And then it does 200 to itself, but yeah, instantly knocks your points active. So, Roaring Moonyax is pretty interesting with its two like powerful attacks there, doing just big damage. You compare this with some of the other ancient stuff. I mentioned Sada's is rotating. Sada's is like super good in my opinion, just like a really good card. And then you also have, like say Brute Bonnet with the Ancient Booster Energy Capsule. Could do the poison stuff as well. The poison stuff isn't really sticking around. I mean, wait, Brute Bonnet is rotating, right? Yeah, Brute Bonnet is rotating. Is Ancient Booster Energy Capsule rotating as well? Yeah, that is. It got reprinted, but it didn't get reprinted with a new regulation mark. So ultimately, most of the Ancient Future stuff, or like a good chunk of it, is rotating, though it's not all rotating, as I said, with like the supporter Explorer's Guidance. That's not that's um Oh, it is Explorer's Guidance. As I said, this card isn't like that good, and I did not play Ancient decks really. But yeah, I guess I could also mention Ancient Box here. That's like losing some stuff as well, but I feel like that deck's a little more boring and a little worse and stuff. Roaring Moonyax though is kind of interesting with a toolbox element to it. With this like Darkness style toolbox deck, which we honestly see Darkness style toolbox decks like all the time. So they are cool decks that probably we'll see another one. Obviously there's all sorts of different toolbox decks floating around, but ultimately, I think that Roaring Moonyax it's a fun little deck if you haven't tried it. And honestly, just like doing crazy, like not crazy damage, I guess, but like one-shotting a Pokemon with absurd HP is super fun as well. But ultimately, there's a lot of really cool decks that are rotating, and I'd highly recommend trying them out. But tell me in the comment section as well if you have other decks that you think other people should try out, right, that are interesting and fun and unique. But I hope you enjoyed. Make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss future content and get this content recommended to other people as well. But I hope you enjoyed, and as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.